Okay, I think we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 17th Central Workshop for the 2027 Active Transportation Program. Before we start off, I'm going to hand it over to Jaden to go over workshop logistics.
Thank you, Anya. Okay, good morning and welcome to the third Cycle 8 ATP Central Workshop. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our workshops can take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners and staff can hear directly from our stakeholders around California. The workshop agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning is available on this webinar. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Any document the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For all of our workshops, we encourage interaction with our stakeholders. There will be opportunity for questions and comments throughout this workshop. We will stop periodically throughout this workshop to address stakeholder questions. You should see the webinar control panel, likely located at the bottom of your screen. There, you will find the Raise Hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the Raise Hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it is your turn to make your comment. Once you have been unmuted, please make sure to state your name and agency you are representing. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment or question. Commission staff will read that on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link or phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise. Please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. And if you face any technical issues, please reach out through the chat or Q&A tab and I will do my best to assist you. Thank you all for joining us today. Just want to highlight some of our workshop principles as well. So please be respectful of other viewpoints. Keep a statewide perspective. Remember the program serves a large variety of applicants. And please feel free to propose your ideas in a public setting so we can all discuss them together. Thank you so much for joining us today. I will turn it back over to Anya.
Thank you, Jaden. All right, so I will briefly introduce today's workshop agenda. So we will start our workshop with a brief program overview for those folks that are maybe new to the ATP. Just to give you a quick overview of what the program is about. We'll recap the last central workshop, which was held on September 4th. And then today's agenda for discussion, we will continue what we started in the September 4th workshop, which is to go over individual sections of the guidelines and introduce just the text edits that we are proposing to clarify existing policy and reduce redundancies in the guidelines so that policies and the guideline content is only stated once. And then we will review the Quick Build pilot program, and then we'll go over action items and conclude the workshop. All right, next slide. So just really quickly, this is your ATP team. My name is Anya Allenbacher. I am the program manager for the ATP, and I'm joined by Alika Changizi, and Jaden Gales, I'm sure you're all familiar with, but next slide. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Alika, who's just going to give you a quick overview of the ATP.
Thanks, Anya. Okay, so before we jump into the workshop, we just wanted to provide a couple of basics on the program. So the ATP funds projects that encourage increased use of active modes of transportation, such as walking and biking. And so the funding for this program, this is a reimbursement program utilizing both federal and state funds. For the 2027 ATP or Cycle 8, we are approximating about 550 million across 4 years. And that includes fiscal years 2027-28 through fiscal year 2030 31. In terms of distribution, the funding is broken out across 3 components. 50% of the funding is in the statewide component. Any projects that are not funded through the statewide component have a second opportunity for funding, either through the small urban and rural component, where 10% of the funds lie, or if you fall under one of the 10 large MPOs, 40% of those funds go to the Metropolitan Planning Organization component. In terms of eligible applicants, we have local, regional, or state agencies, so that includes cities, counties, MPOs, and RTPAs. Caltrans, transit agencies, natural resources, or public land agencies can also apply. Public schools or school districts, tribal governments, private nonprofits, tax-exempt organizations, and any other entity with transportation oversight that has been approved by commission staff. In terms of eligible projects, we have 4 different project types. We have infrastructure projects. So these are capital projects that further the goals of the program. Non-infrastructure are education and encouragement programs that also further the goals of the program. We have plans, and these are community-wide bicycle, pedestrian, safe routes to school, or active transportation plans that encompass a disadvantaged community. And we have infrastructure plus non-infrastructure or combination applications. So these are capital projects that include education or encouragement components. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a high-level overview looking at the past 7 cycles. There are 1,230 projects programmed for a total of 3.9 billion in ATP funds, and this is starting in cycle 1 and out through cycle 7. We have 1.9 billion allocated as of fiscal year 24-25. And the total project costs for all of these projects are valued at over 7.4 billion. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Jaden, I'm handing things over to you.
Thank you, Alika. All right, I'll be going over the 2027 ATP engagement. So as you can see on the screen, we offer a variety of different opportunities to engage with CTC staff. What you're at today is the central workshop. So these are for discussions, recommending changes to guidelines, applications, or scoring rubrics. Really an opportunity for CTC staff and stakeholders to get together and discuss some of these things, as a group and come to consensus together. We also offer branch workshops, and those are available on request. And these are to provide region-specific technical assistance and program education generally to smaller and more remote regions and agencies. And we do have these available. If you go to the CTC website, you will find the branch workshop registration form, and I'll also have a link to that on the next slide. Additionally, we also do provide site visits, which are also available on request. And our site visits are opportunities to have one-on-one time with commission staff to discuss potential Cycle 8 projects. Again, the registration form is available on the CTC's website, as well as this slide. Going over our schedule, so in January, we will present the draft 2027 ATP guidelines to the commission. Following that, in March, commission will consider adoption of the 2027 ATP guidelines and open our call for projects. And specifically why that deadline is important is once we open our call for projects, our engagement will end. So we will no longer provide branch workshops, site visits. So really it's your opportunity to get that scheduled, and we'll make that happen before we open that call for projects, but that's a very important deadline. So here you can see this is our Cycle 8 engagement strategy. Again, I mentioned the central workshops, which you are attending today. Those will be virtual, as well as our branch workshops. Those will be virtual. And some workshops may be hybrid, particularly at the October CTC meeting in Merced, as well as at our December meeting in Riverside, California. As I mentioned, we do have a registration link for the branch workshops using this online form, which is available again on the CTC's website, and it will be available on this slideshow presentation, which we will post after our workshop today. I do want to mention that completion of the registration form does not guarantee a Cycle 8 branch workshop. CTC staff will take a look at the request for these workshops and try to tailor it to the agencies that really need the most technical assistance. Again, the site visits, which I had mentioned in the prior slide, those will be conducted virtually, again, with a registration form available on our website, as well as in this slideshow presentation. Lastly, I did want to mention our application debriefs. Those are available, and those are really great opportunities to discuss prior applications in the ATP, and we can essentially tell you where things went wrong, where things went right, in the hopes that it'll help you improve your application for future submittals. I'll pause here to see if we have any questions or comments regarding our Cycle 8 strategies and engagement. Okay, hearing none, so I will go to the next slide. All right. September 4th workshop recap. Okay, so I wanted to provide a workshop recap from our last central workshop. So during our workshop, we covered a variety of topics. Similar to what you'll see today, we're going to walk you through our guidelines and the proposed red line changes, and that's essentially what we did in our last workshop as well. So particularly on the screen, as you see, these are the various parts of the guidelines that we discussed. For example, in parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8, we discussed the clarified guidelines language. And we also discussed the new guidelines section in part 2, the funding overview, with the new funding restriction sections, as well as part 9, the reporting section. We also went over the deleted guidelines sections, which included the Justice 40 initiative. If you were unable to attend our prior workshop, the recording of the workshop is available on our CTC website, as well as the presentation from that workshop. Okay, and I believe I'm turning it back over to Anya.
Thank you, Jaden. Okay, so as advertised, we will start going through a few of the sections to talk about the updates that we're proposing. So next slide, please. Okay, so the first section that we wanted to talk about is the section that discusses leveraging funds. So I want to point out that the redlined language is really just a clarification, um, and um, uh, and also updating the language to be consistent with how the same policies are stated in other commission guidelines. Um, you'll see the blue text or blue box rather around this one sentence here. And I wanted to point that out because that is new um, a new update to this section, was not previously included. And this, I'll just read the sentence. So it's regarding the local streets and roads program funding may be used for leveraging. However, apportionments must be received from the state controller's office, and the project must be eligible as outlined in the local streets and roads program guidelines. And really what this is meant to memorialize is that local streets and roads program funding, which is an SB1 program, the funds can be used, however, they must be committed, as all leveraging funds must be committed. And this just states and clarifies how we perceive local streets and roads program funding as committed. It's once the apportionments have been received from the state controller's office, that's when the commission identifies those as committed funds. I'll pause there, see if there's any questions, comments.
Give it another minute. Not seeing anything come in at this point.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide, which continues the leveraging funds section, and then we can always go back if there's questions. So, as I just said, this is the section continued, and this part is really just clarifying language. There are no updates or new items in this section here. And I think that is the end of this section. So I'll stop here and just wait for a little bit to see if there's any questions or comments. Okay.
We have one hand raised. Teresa, go ahead.
So I'm looking at that language there that says the commission will not consider in-kind, non-infrastructure staff time or non-participating funds as eligible for leveraging. So in-kind staff time, it has to be actual dollars spent. It can't be in-kind staff time.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that has been in the guidelines for several cycles now. But yes, thanks for clarifying that. It's important.
Not seeing. Oh, one more hand. Okay, I think that one was an error. Not seeing any other hands raised or questions come in.
Okay, let's go to the next section then. So this is the section that talks about the commission's contingency list that the commission may or may not choose to have at the time of programming. And again, there's no policy update here. It's really just some clarifying edits. Okay, so I'm not seeing Any questions?
No, no questions or hands raised.
Okay, let's go to the next section. So this is the section that notifies everyone about the letter of no prejudice. This is something that's included in all commission program guidelines as an option that is allowed in statute. What I've done here is not change any policy or anything, but I've added language to clarify when a letter of no prejudice can be requested. It's a pretty narrow reason, and we do receive questions every once in a while wanting to use the letter of no prejudice for a reason other than the intent. So, based on the intent outlined in the Commission's letter of no prejudice guidelines, which this section has always provided a link to, I've just added some language that kind of clarifies that.
We did get one question come in through the chat. Lucy is asking, will these edits affect any of the wording in the application itself? Some sections could potentially be improved, such as the safety sections.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Lucy. So, it is our intent to provide some minor language clarifications in the application. However, we do not intend to change any of the application questions. But yes, we will in a future workshop go over some, clarifying edits to the application questions.
Not seeing
Okay.
any other questions or hands raised.
Okay, let's go keep moving then. All right. So this is the project cost savings section. So the only thing that was added in this section is a sentence that defines what the commission means when we talk about savings being returned proportionally. So it's really just a clarification, but that other than like some minor text edits, that's really the only change here. If we go to the next slide, the section continues. So this policy was always included in the project cost savings section. And what we've done here is just kind of made it a subsection of the project cost savings section to kind of highlight the policy, the existing policy, and made just some clarifications here. Yeah, so this is an existing policy that we hopefully just kind of clarified a couple things that we get questions about every once in a while. I'll pause there for questions.
Not seeing any questions or hands raised.
Okay. So let's move to the next slide. All right. Alika, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I can present these slides. Okay, so starting with project delivery, project cancellation. So similar to what Anya has been talking about, there are just minor text edits on this section. You'll see those outlined in red. So I'll just pause here to allow folks to take a second to look over, but mostly just providing additional clarification on this section. And I'll take a pause to see if there are any comments or questions. Okay, not
Hey,
seeing
Alika,
any.
seeing no questions or comments.
Thanks, Jaden. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking at section 40, which is the audits. So again, this is very minor text edits, adding more clarification. So now this section reads, the audit requirements are outlined in the Commission's accountability and transparency guidelines and will be required for all projects programmed in the ATP. I'll pause to see if there are any questions. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to go through these next few sections. So we are recommending removing or deleting the section roles and responsibilities. And you'll see this is broken out into 4 subsections. So I'll go through each of those and then we'll pause for questions at the end. So next slide, please. Okay, so roles and responsibilities, these are sections 41, 42, 43, and 44. So why we want to delete these sections. Most of the information in these are redundant and it's already stated in other parts of the guidelines. Additionally, policies that were exclusively included in these sections have been incorporated into other sections of the guidelines. So you'll see as I kind of go through each of these subsections, excuse me, there will be deleted text, but a lot of it is also being moved to other sections of the guidelines. And we're also doing this to be consistent with other CTC program guidelines. So next slide, please. Okay, so starting with section 41, these are the California Transportation Commission's roles and responsibilities. So we are, again, recommending deleting this text and moving any relevant language to other sections of the guidelines. So I'll take a pause here. This is basically outlining all of the activities and responsibilities that commission staff holds in terms of oversight over the ATP. So nothing new here. And then next slide, please. Okay, section 42. This is outlining Caltrans's roles and responsibilities. Similar to the previous subsection, we are deleting this text and moving any relevant language to other sections of the guidelines. And then Jaden, if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so section 43 is the MPO roles and responsibilities. So you'll see this, all of this language is in green text instead of red, and that's because this language was moved to the new MPO section. As we made that move, we also went through and refined the language. So if there were any redundancies that we noted, those sections have been deleted. Other than that, the majority of the information has remained and is now under the new MPO section. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this final section under roles and responsibilities is the RTPAs outside an MPO with large urbanized areas and MPOs without large urbanized areas. So this text was deleted. If there was anything that was relevant to other sections, it has been moved to those respective sections. Otherwise, the language here has been removed from the guidelines. So I know that was a lot covered in these 5 slides. So I'll take a pause here to see if there are any questions, comments, any feedback that comes in.
Hey, Alika, so far seeing no questions or comments.
Okay, thanks, Jaden.
Okay, so I think we can move to the next slide. And I want to just say, if you think of anything as we move through the workshop, we can always go back to a previous slide. We're happy to do that. So I wanted to shift gears right now and talk about the Quick Build pilot program. We wanted to have a discussion on whether or not the Quick Build pilot program should continue in the ATP in cycle 8. Before we start the discussion, Alika and I will provide you with a brief history of how the Quick Build pilot program evolved and started, as well as how it's been doing, for example, success rate and delivery status of funded projects. Unless you have clarifying questions, I would like to hold the discussion until the end of our presentation. I think having some of this background and context will hopefully help to inform the discussion. And we will conclude our presentation on the Quick Build pilot program with what staff is recommending for the pilot. And then we'll open it for discussion. All right, next slide. Okay, so the quick builds have been available for applicants to apply for 3 cycles now. It was first available in cycle 5 and also cycle 6 and this past cycle, cycle 7. So as you can see here, we received the most applications in cycle 5. And we funded 8 projects in the statewide component and 2 projects in the MPO component. And as you can see from the chart on the screen, the number of applications that we receive each cycle has been declining. And we've not funded any quick build projects in the statewide or small urban and rural components since cycle 5. And well, actually, I should say we've not funded any in the statewide components in cycle 5, and we've never funded any quick build projects in the small urban and rural component. I think it's worth noting that all of the quick builds funded through the statewide component were in cities that are within a large MPO region. Alika is going to talk about a more detailed geographic breakout of funded projects in a later slide. So in total, we've funded 14 quick build projects out of 41 total applications received over 3 cycles, which is about a 34% success rate. Next slide. I'll pass it over to Alika.
Thanks, Anya. Okay, so I wanted to kind of go through the Quick Build program history, and I'll kind of break it out by cycle. So before we started before we started cycle 5, we had heard interest from our stakeholders that they were wanting a quick build pilot. So we worked really closely with our stakeholders who have experience with implementing quick builds, just to get a better understanding of the types of projects we would like to see. So we met with our stakeholders. We met with our technical advisory committee. We created a subgroup within our TAC and met with them and talked through the quick build. So starting in cycle 5, this was the first cycle of the quick build pilot program. We decided to dedicate a maximum of 7 million towards the quick build projects. In terms of our evaluation process, we really wanted to have, a bunch of eyes looking at these projects. So our evaluation team consisted of ATP staff, CTC engineers, as well as our Caltrans project managers. So we had a ton of eyes looking at these applications. After cycle 5, there were 8 projects that were recommended, and these were through the statewide component. So out of the 7 million that we dedicated to the first phase of the pilot, 4.4 million was awarded in ATP requests. There were also 2 quick build projects that were applied for and granted through the MPO component. So in terms of feedback, we had an internal debrief among our evaluation team, and we really talked through lessons learned and determined what we wanted to strategize going into cycle 6. But we also received feedback from our stakeholders requesting additional guidance on the quick build projects. And I will say we kept things a bit more at a high level in cycle 5, just because we weren't really sure the types of projects we would be receiving. And so based on feedback from the stakeholders, they really wanted clarification on what the quick builds are, what are acceptable improvements, what are allowable materials, and what are commission and Caltrans expectations for these projects. So looking at phase 2, this was specific to cycle 6. There were a lot of things that we knew that needed to be resolved, especially talking with all of the quick build applicants, talking with our stakeholders. And so we knew that there were some delivery issues and there were some challenges with the application and evaluation. So in terms of delivery, we noticed that the project schedules for these quick build projects looked more like the traditional ATP project schedules. And so the quick builds weren't actually able to fulfill the intent of implementing quick solutions to address an immediate need, whether that be safety or closing a gap within your network. So that was one of the main things that we noted. We also noticed that the projects hadn't received environmental clearance or categorical exemption at the time of application. And so that was another thing that was kind of slowing down the schedule and timeline for these quick build projects. And so another thing we noted was that a lot of the projects had complicated right-of-way issues. And one major issue that stood out to us in cycle 5 was there were projects that required coordination with the railroad. And based on our experience with the regular infrastructure applications, we noted that that can also cause significant delays to the construction of quick build projects. Again, in terms of delivery, We noted that some of the quick build projects requested time extensions, and they were because we hadn't elaborated on our timely use of funds policy in relation to quick builds. Some of those projects were able to request, 20 months to extend their allocation deadlines. And so that ended up, factoring into delayed project schedules. And then we also noted that the traditional scope change process wouldn't work well with the quick builds because quick build projects are supposed to change based on community feedback. And the traditional scope change process didn't really work well with these quick build projects. In terms of our application and evaluation challenges, we noted that many of the Cycle 5 applications weren't flexible or adjustable, and instead they seemed more like small infrastructure projects. So we really wanted to address that going into Cycle 6. We also noted that applicants were required to submit detailed cost estimates and layouts, but again, that didn't align with the flexibility and adjustable nature of quick build projects. We noted many projects didn't have comprehensive plans for continued or continuous community engagement. And that was something that we had heard from, while we were putting the quick build pilot together, was that these projects should really be informed through a continuous community engagement process. And so we really needed to think that through and make sure that we were allowing enough time for testing project configurations and integrating community feedback into those changes. With reporting requirements, we noticed that the quick build templates also needed to be revised to account for ongoing community engagement. And then in Cycle 5, we used a different scoring system. We used the high, medium, low scoring system. And so after Cycle 5, one piece of feedback that we received from the MPOs was that they had requested a numerical scoring system, preferably out of 100 points, so that if there are any quick build projects that were submitted to the state, they can be more easily considered for the regional competition. And so going into Cycle 6, we made sure to, with everything that we had kind of internally determined that needed to change, we also touched base with our stakeholders, our technical advisory committee, and our technical advisory committee subgroup that was focused on quick builds. And so some of the feedback that we received and, was all incorporated into what we determined for Cycle 6. So we required that projects be environmentally cleared. We were only funding construction phases. We allowed design, build, delivery. So if a implementer decided to move forward with that delivery process, in those instances, they were allowed to request PS&E and construction. We also shortened allowable time extensions to 3 months for the quick build projects. We allowed cost estimates to be submitted to include more than one alternate. And we provided additional project examples and resources through the ATP guidelines, and we dedicated an appendix specific to the quick builds. And Caltrans put together a really, really comprehensive and helpful quick build supplemental guidance. And I think it's been updated every year since, but this supplemental guidance outlines the quick builds, what exactly that means, example projects, and example project materials. We maintained a maximum of 7 million dedicated to the quick builds in Cycle 6. Ultimately, we did not end up recommending any projects in the statewide component. However, there were 2 that were recommended in the MPO component. And one thing to keep in mind is that Cycle 6 received the one-time augmentation. With that said, we still ended up receiving less quick build applications in Cycle 6 compared to Cycle 5. And then in terms of our evaluation process, it remained pretty consistent. We had ATP staff and our Caltrans project managers continue to look over those applications. And then in terms of post-cycle feedback, our stakeholders requested additional quick build eligibility expectations. And so going into cycle 7, this was really phase 3 of the quick build pilot. We continued reevaluations and refining the cycle 6 quick build phase. And so a lot of the same concerns that we had in cycle 6 or prior to cycle 6 starting kind of continued throughout that cycle. And so for cycle 7, we required potential projects to hold eligibility meetings with commission staff before having access to a quick build application. And so we held these meetings to kind of talk through projects and ensure that the materials that they're using, the timeline that they're proposing all kind of fit the criteria of the quick build. And one other thing that we ended up requiring was we required projects to include a community testing period of at least 6 months to conduct ongoing engagement, gather feedback on the project, and then make changes as needed. And so again, for cycle 7, we maintained that 7 million maximum. We ended up not recommending any quick build projects in the statewide component. However, there were 2 that were recommended in the MPO component. Again, ATP staff and Caltrans project managers continued our evaluation process. And stakeholders had agreed to review the quick build performance after 3 cycles. So that brings us kind of here to today. Jaden, would you please go to the next slide? So again, just continuing with the overview, I wanted to kind of provide a breakdown without the table being so text heavy. So for cycle 5, we did the high, medium, high, low scoring. So the highest scores that we received were high and medium high in cycle 5. So there was 1 application that received a high and 7 received medium highs, and those were the 8 that we ended up funding. And just to kind of put in perspective with the regular program outside of the quick build, the statewide cutoff score was a 92, and the small urban and rural cutoff score was a 90 in cycle 5. Looking at cycle 6, the top scores for quick builds were an 80 and a 76. There was 1 project that received an 80 and 2 received a 76. In terms of the cutoff score in the statewide component, the cutoff score was an 89, and in small urban and rural, it was a 78. Again, please remember that this was a cycle where we had $1 billion in augmentation funds. So I wanted to share what the cutoff scores were in the statewide and small urban and rural to kind of put in perspective why we ended up not recommending any projects in the statewide component. Out of the 11 applications that were submitted, quick build applications that were submitted in cycle 6, 4 of those were deemed ineligible. And it was because those 4 projects had over 50% of the costs that were deemed ineligible. So either the materials were permanent, or feedback from Caltrans that they noted. So there was 1 project that had 50% of the costs that were ineligible. There were 2 projects that were at over 60%, and there was 1 project where 100% of the costs were ineligible. Some of the challenges that continued with 7 out of the 11. So the 4 that were not deemed ineligible, some of the challenges that we noticed were that these look like small infrastructure projects proposing permanent infrastructure. They weren't utilizing temporary materials or improvements. The projects were not environmentally cleared as the guidelines had called out. And almost all the projects requested pre-construction phases, even though we had made it clear that construction was the only allowable phase. And then looking at cycle 7, the highest quick build scores were an 89 and an 84. And there was one application that received an 89 and one that received an 84. In the statewide component, the cutoff score was a 96. And in small, urban, and rural, the cutoff score was a 95. Let's see. So, okay, I think we can go to the next slide, Jaden. Okay, Anya.
Thanks, Alika. Okay, so how are the 14 funded quick build projects doing? So 12 out of the 14 have been received allocation approval. There have been some setbacks. So the commission approved 4 time extensions for allocation. 2 of them were COVID related, but one was due to significant design changes that needed to be addressed before they could move forward. And we've also approved 3 scope changes. And only one quick build project has been completed and closed out so far. The cycle 5 quick build projects were programmed in fiscal years 2021 and 21-22. So in the last 4 to 5 years, doesn't seem to be a very quick delivery rate. Next slide. Okay, so some of the challenges that we have encountered over the different cycles include confusion over the application and eligibility, and I think Alika provided some really great detail on what we mean by that. And the Quick Build pilot program has also required additional staff time with technical assistance that's not typically provided for the other application types. And you know, I think a question that the staff has pondered and that we you know, are wondering is the Quick Build program or projects a good fit for a state funded program? You know, the state process is inherently slow moving, and you know, there are 3 of us on the active transportation program team, but we also have, over 1,200 projects programmed, as you heard at the beginning of the presentation. And I think, you know, about like over half of them of the projects have been completed, but, you know, the rest of them do keep us busy. Okay, next slide. Alika, I'm gonna pass it back to you.
Thanks, Anya. Okay, so another fun table here. So these are just the quick build takeaways that we wanted to put together for you all. So, okay, with this, starting in cycle 5, I'll just kind of like run through this information because we have talked through the majority of it. So There were 22 applications that were submitted, 10 were funded in both the statewide and MPO component. One project has been closed out and completed, meaning the final delivery report has been submitted and approved. In terms of geographic balance, you'll see there were several regions that participated in the Quick Build pilot phase 1. So we have the Fresno region, the MTC region, SCAG, and Tulare region, as well as El Dorado County and San Luis Obispo counties participate. And in terms of who was funded, we recommended projects in the Fresno, Bay Area, and SCAG regions. In terms of challenges that we noted, the project schedules were too long for quick build. Some projects should have used the small infrastructure application. Looking at cycle 6, there were 11 projects submitted, 2 were funded in the MPO component. Neither of those have submitted and have approved final delivery reports. So in terms of geographic balance, we have MTC, SCAG, SACOG, and SANDAG regions, as well as Shasta County that submitted quick build applications in cycle 6. And in terms of what was funded, it was 2 projects and the MPO component that fell in the SCAG region. Challenges that we talked through for cycle 6, some of the proposed improvements and materials were not temporary. The projects were not environmentally cleared. Some of the projects were ineligible and had over 50% of their costs deemed ineligible. And some of the projects, again, should have utilized the small infrastructure application. Looking at cycle 7, there were 8 projects submitted. 2 of those were funded in the MPO component. Neither of those have submitted or have approved final delivery reports. In terms of geographic balance, MTC, SCAG, and Santa Cruz County submitted quick build applications, and 2 were funded in the MPO component from the SCAG region. The challenges were that we held eligibility meetings and that the applications did not score high enough to be funded. So I think
Yeah.
it would be helpful.
So,
I think we were going to pause here, right?
Yeah, we'll pause here, and there is one chat suggestion in the chat, excuse me, that I wanted to just point out. Tina Backstrom suggests it would be great to add the dates of the various cycles to the slides. That's a good suggestion, and we can do that before we post the PDF on our website at the conclusion of this workshop. So
Thanks, Tina.
I wanted to also just wrap things up. So I think Alika just gave a really great roundup of the history of the program, and, you know, some of the issues and challenges that we addressed. So I want to just emphasize what she said, that, you know, we really put in a lot of effort to make this pilot program work. We provided resources, technical assistance, and guidance to interested agencies. So, you know, this pilot program has not just been a small part of the ATP program that was kind of left to fend for itself. Our staff and some of you may remember Beverly Newman Burkhart, and I think she and Alika and Lori Waters worked really hard to and put a lot of time into finding out what makes a successful quick build program. You know, I know Beverly researched different quick build programs across the country, you know, not just in California, and integrated those aspects into our pilot program. So, you know, after all of that, I I think our conclusion is just that we don't think the numbers show that the Quick Build pilot program has been as successful as we've hoped, and as I think probably some of our stakeholders had hoped. So before we open it up for discussion, and we do want to hear your feedback on this and your thoughts and your input. Let's go to the next slide real quick, and then so staff is recommending, based on the history and the success rate of the pilot program, we're recommending that we take the Quick Build pilot program out of the statewide and small urban and rural components, but we keep it in the MPO component. And we did present this information that we just presented to you to our ATP Technical Advisory Committee. And they supported our recommendation. So let's go back to slide 7, because I think it has a lot of good, or sorry, the previous slide. I think has a lot of good information that you can reference during the discussion. So we'll stop talking and pause here and open it up for any questions you have about the information that was presented, and also open it up for discussion on how to move forward with the pilot program.
Amelia, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I work for a regional agency and I have not submitted a quick build application through ATP, but we are having a lot of conversations about funding our own quick build projects with our regional funding. And a couple of questions and thoughts that have been coming up are that we really feel like keeping quick build projects in place, if it's a pilot, if it's meant to be a test of a new design, keeping those projects in place for a couple years is the ideal timeframe to give people time to get used to a big change and to do a lot of data collection before and after the changes are installed. And so I have a question about the temporary materials and the materials list and whether something like permanent striping and bollards would be allowable. Because from our perspective, it really is helpful to keep these changes in place for a good amount of time, which means that you do need permanent striping to be installed. And my second question is that when we have conversation with our local agencies about a potential pilot program, something that we're hearing is that the outreach and the data collection is really a challenge for many of the agencies, that they're not set up to do a lot of community outreach around these changes, and that they are not set up to do the data collection that's required. And so my other question is about having the construction phase only be allowable for funding, because what we're hearing from our agencies is that support with outreach and support with data collection would really help to make these types of projects more feasible for them. So again, I haven't submitted an application through ATP, but these are some of the things that we're hearing in our own discussions on this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Amelia. So, I want to just respond to like one part of what you said first. So, the commission programs, the infrastructure projects that we fund, are required to have a 20-year useful life. That is a commission-wide requirement. So we really wanted to differentiate the quick builds from that. And so the time frame that we gave for quick builds is that they would be in place for 1 to 5 years. So I think I think that maybe addresses the point that you were making, you know, where it would be helpful to have it in place for, you know, more than a year. And that is allowable under this, or that was allowable under this pilot program. Um, you know, in terms of like your very specific question about whether or not striping is allowed, I would have to check on that. Um, yeah, but uh, let's see. Alika, did you have anything to add to a response?
Um, so in terms of the materials, um, this is partly why we held the eligibility meetings as well. And we had our Caltrans partners on the call, just so their area of expertise is more in the weeds of the projects, whereas we're more so looking at the quick builds from a programmatic standpoint. So if you do have specific questions on materials, I recommend reaching out to Caltrans and getting clarification from them. But I also recommend looking at the quick build guidance that they put together because it is very thorough. There are resources within that supplemental guidance as well. So we can talk more offline, Amelia, about concerns that your region has, or you know, further questions and connecting you to the right folks.
You okay? We see another hand. Carl.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Carl Anderson with MTC. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, thanks. So I just want to say, or I guess express my gratitude to all of CTC staff and Caltrans staff over the last 3 years for, really putting in a lot of work to explore how to make, quick builds fit within our state systems and the ATP program as a whole. It's clear and evident that you guys all put in a ton of work to try and figure out a way to make this work. And I just want to thank you for that because I think that, we had a very unique opportunity to try and fund even more unique style of projects for this program. My question, though, with the recommendation that you're moving forward with, Anya, for eligibility for quick build projects in the MPO programs, is that just going to be kind of treated as a eligible project type, and then it's going to be kind of upon the MPOs that manage those programs to, do the screening to make sure that the quick build style projects fit all the criteria in the appendix guidelines? Or is that something that each of those interested applicants will still have to work with you to, parse out and figure out, and then they apply it to the MPO? What is that going to look like?
Thanks for the question, Carl. So, I think it, could be set up a few different ways. And honestly, if we receive consensus from the group today to only keep the quick build program, pilot program in the MPO component, what our next steps would be is to work with the MPOs. During our TAC meeting, there, are of course some MPOs represented there, and there were some similar types of questions of how would this work in our regional program. And so our next step, should we reach consensus today, would be to work with the MPOs to make sure that we can implement any changes to the pilot program as needed for the MPOs. And we can definitely talk through what the application would look like. But I think because the quick build application type would not be allowed in the statewide competition, it would have to be submitted to an MPO through the regional call.
Okay.
Whatever that looks like for each individual MPO.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. I'll pause there and allow other people to chime in before additional comments. Thanks, Anya.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Okay, so have a couple chat comments in the chat that I'll read while we're waiting for additional comments. Teresa notes, your recommendation makes total sense, saves small agencies the extra time to Ginger commented, SBCTA fully supports removing quick builds from the state component. And then I hope everyone saw Alika also posted a link to the quick build project supplemental guidance, which our Caltrans partners put together. And it provides a lot of really great information, such as example quick build project types, and discusses eligible materials as well. Any other discussion or comments, questions, thoughts? Tina, yes.
Go ahead, Tina.
Hey, how you doing? I had a quick question about, I know the quick bills tend to not be as quick as quick, most people think quick is, right? Like the communities are complaining because, these things are taking so long and oh my God, this project was, like it's only supposed to be this small thing here and it's now been 5 years. In order to submit for the quick bill, do you have to, and excuse my ignorance on this question, so I apologize in advance.
No, don't. It's all good. Please
Yeah,
ask.
gotta ask the question, gotta ask. But does the project have to be like, do they have to have plans and so forth in place for these quick build projects to be submitted? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, or is there a way to have maybe, okay, well, we're looking at, 4 different locations to be able to do these various types of improvements and maybe not have something as prescriptive, but here's the toolbox of items that we can utilize and, or we'll do 4 locations. They haven't been determined yet, but if we get the money, then we can just, something comes up, we can just go do that. Or does it have to be super prescriptive to like location as well as the, what is going to be installed versus the ability to install from the toolbox? I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. Alika, do you have a
Yeah.
response? Yeah.
Yeah, so I can chime in here and I'll lean on our Caltrans partners because I know they're on the call too. So please feel free to help me as I kind of talk through this. So with the quick build projects, we need I think at minimum at least a concrete project location. After the first cycle, we kind of noted that there were some adjustments that we needed to make. So we do allow, or we did allow the quick build applicants starting in cycle 6 to submit multiple alternatives and layouts and cost estimates equated to those layouts. However, in terms of applying, we need something more concrete than we have 4 potential quick builds. We haven't determined where those will take place. That likely would not be eligible. We would need something a little bit more determined and defined. And so within your project limits, you can submit different project improvements. And then based on the community feedback that is gathered through the 1 to 5 years, you can make those adjustments as needed, and it doesn't have to necessarily align with what was originally submitted, because it is the community that's informing how the project evolves over time. I hope that answers your question.
What it does, it does in a way. I do understand what you're saying. We have a lot of communities that want to be able to come out and help, and they want to be able to do the work. Are the quick build projects only allow? Are the only people who can apply for the quick builds the local jurisdictions, or let's say a community group, can they apply for a quick build project? Or does it have to be awarded to the quote unquote the local jurisdiction? And I say that because we've found a lot of, community groups that want to just do some things, right? Like they want to do it, right? And
Yeah.
And then they go through the bureaucracy of our local jurisdictions, and that's a whole nother issue, right?
Yeah. So I think for implementation, we've found through these 3 cycles that an agency is probably going to be able to oversee implementation much easier. I will say for our non-infrastructure, which is separate from the quick builds, we have seen community members be involved in some of like the project elements. But that's kind of separate from the quick builds. Anya, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, I wanted to add that in order to apply for the quick build project type, you have to be an eligible agency as listed in our guidelines for any of the applications.
What about a CBO?
So we do allow nonprofit organizations to, or they are eligible. However, it's pretty specific and it's tied to some of the funding. So a good way to look at whether or not it's a good idea to apply is, can the agency enter into a master agreement with Caltrans, because that is something that is needed in order to start the reimbursement process, and the invoicing process is all handled through that, through Caltrans, and they require a master agreement. So I think it might be hard for a CBO to get a master agreement with Caltrans. Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Understood. That's a separate question probably for Caltrans.
Yeah.
Okay, I got
Yeah,
you.
and that's another one of those challenges, that kind of doesn't allow a quick build project type in the ATP, in this program specifically, to be flexible enough, because of all of the state processes that we are really legally held to. So, that's the question. That's where that question comes in. Is this a good fit for a state program? And, yes, and to your point, sometimes just getting a contract in place to start an invoicing process is like the hardest part.
Exactly. And I know Amelia had a good question also in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So Amelia commented in the chat, TAMC supports keeping the quick build funding in the small urban and rural, or in this, small urban and rural component, I think is what you meant. We're working with our jurisdictions on this type of project, and it would be really helpful if outreach and data collection was eligible for funding. Yes, Tina.
So now I have another question based on what she said. Is the quick build, or is it only in the small and rural counties category?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Quick Build pilot program was available to any applicant, whether so basically in the statewide competition, which the project selection starts with the statewide component, and then as depending on where the project applicant is located, it either is eligible for the MPO component or the small urban and rural component. So
I see. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Phew. Okay.
Okay, any other comments or discussion?
We just got a comment in the chat from Molly. Given the reduced amount of overall program funding for the program, if quick builds were to be removed, is there a way to make the small infrastructure category more compelling so that more projects can receive funding? This may help bolster these types of low costs and or quick build solutions being implemented. Based on previous cycles, it seems like many of the highest scoring projects are in the large or medium categories. So I can start responding to this. So every cycle, before we release our staff recommendations, we do a very thorough analysis of how many of each type of application we've received. And we look at this very closely because we want to make sure what we're funding is representative of what we've received. So the past few cycles, when we've conducted this analysis, we've noticed that we've funded the same amount of each application type with proportion to how many was submitted. So I know it may seem like we're funding more large and medium projects, but we're actually funding a significant amount of small projects as well. It's not just medium and large. We're also funding, quick builds and non-infrastructure and plans as well. And so if there is an instance where we do this analysis and we're noticing that the staff recommendations are veering off and weighing more towards one application type, that's definitely something we'll bring to the stakeholder group. It's not something that we wouldn't discuss. And then in terms of your question, if there was a way to make the small infrastructure category more compelling, would you maybe mind coming off mute and providing an example or explaining more what you mean by that?
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry,
Yes.
It took me forever to get off mute there. No, I just know it from previous experience. I've generally only submitted medium and large category applications. I don't know that it should rank any differently. Hearing your explanation of the ratio of awards being in line with the categories, I think that makes sense. But I know that there's a lot of projects that we've been looking at that are using, AC dike instead of full depth curves and things. But a lot of these projects we haven't necessarily done the design for yet. So I think it would still be in that small infrastructure category. And thinking overall of the pot, if we have less to work with than we have in the past, maybe spreading it out more. But I didn't have any particular ideas on how to make that.
Okay, that's helpful context. Thanks for that, Molly. Yeah, and I will say, with the way that we put the applications together, it was very intentional. And this isn't just, since cycle 5, it's really been from the beginning of the program. The larger the projects are, the more information that we require in the applications. The narrative responses we expect to be more detailed and specific to the project compared to a small, for example. So we did try to kind of make the applications fit the type of projects that are going to be submitted. So I will add that as well. But thank you for your comment, Molly.
Thank you.
As we wait for other comments, I wanted to loop back to Amelia's comment regarding to outreach and data collection being eligible for funding. So with that portion of like expenditure type, I guess, we really refer to the non-infrastructure guidance, and because what is allowed under the non-infrastructure program is pretty specific, and it's based on statute and that type of guidance. So I'm not sure if that is something that we could designate as eligible. I would have to lean on my colleagues who manage the non-infrastructure components to but in conversations that we've had previously about this, because this is something that was brought up by other stakeholders as well, I'm not sure that that's something that we could make eligible in the program. Any other questions or discussion on this item? So I think we heard a lot of support for the staff recommendation to continue the pilot program in the MPO component. We did hear some support for allowing the small urban and rural eligible areas to also still be eligible. We heard that from one stakeholder. I think, yeah. Any other input on this? Okay. Give it another few seconds, and then we'll move on to workshop recap and action items. Last call for input on this. And I guess I'll just say, for conclusion, what I was hearing was a majority support for the staff recommendation. If you think I heard that wrong, please let me know. Carl, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me, Anya?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think that you have heard the room correctly, but I will say that MTC just in general is still supportive of keeping the quick build program around in the state program. But I definitely do recognize the amount of effort and extra work that requires to, make that work. But just wanted to voice my support for keeping it in still. Yeah, that's that.
Okay. I do have a question for you on that. So, obviously MTC is a part of our MPO component. So I was just wondering if maybe you can give me some context on the support for the whole statewide, because I mean, either way, MTC would benefit. Obviously, if we keep it in the MPO component, MTC would benefit from that still.
Yeah, I think that it gives more jurisdictions around the state more opportunity to fund a variety of projects as opposed to just limiting it to the jurisdictions that fall within an MPO that is administering one of the 10 programs. So ultimately, it's just, more opportunities for a more diverse set of projects around the state and more opportunities for folks to receive funding for their whatever projects they need that fit the needs of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we did receive one additional written comment from Ginger. She says, can we leave it up to the MPOs if they want to include quick builds but not require it?
Yes, absolutely. The MPOs, because if we move forward with the quick build pilot only remaining in the MPO component, the MPOs would be required to include that application in their regional call for projects, which they handle. And so it would be up to the MPO on whether or not they want to include that type of project in their regional call for projects. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it would just need to be called out in their regional guidelines.
Yep. As an eligible project. Yeah. Yep. It would not be required. It would just be an option. Okay. So Jaden, do you want to move on to the action items?
Yes, thank you, Anya. Okay, thank you everyone for your attendance today. We'll be going over the action items. So I don't believe I heard any new action items from today's meeting, but happy to go over some of the prior action items we have listed, which again are available on the CTC's website. So going over our current action items, we have 1, CTC staff will work with Caltrans to inquire about the master agreement process and analyze the efficiencies of the process. 2, which is a future workshop discussion, consider adding the transformative question to the small and medium infrastructure and non-infrastructure applications. Additionally, we also have the for CTC to incorporate Cycle 7 evaluator feedback on submittable. The CTC will also consider an alternative disadvantaged community qualifier to replace the US DOT Equitable Transportation Community Explorer. The CTC will also determine if the ATP can be state-only funded. And as additional future workshop discussions, we're looking at guidance on the use of AI in applications. We're considering doubling the total points for all applications. We'll also be looking at a two-step application process. And we'll also be discussing letters of support, again, as future workshop discussions. That is currently available on our website. That list I read off of, the action items, you can find them on our Cycle 8 Central Workshop tab. Okay. Moving on, I did want to highlight our next workshop. So our next workshop will be October 1st from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. The focus of this workshop will be looking at the non-infrastructure guidance document, as well as the ATP guidelines. The link to register is available on the CTC's website. And when this presentation posts, you will also be able to find the registration link from the presentation itself. And I also wanted to highlight another workshop we have, which is the December 4th workshop. This will take place in Riverside, California. This will be a hybrid workshop, so you can come in person or you can join online via Zoom like these prior workshops. And at the December 4th workshop, which is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we'll be discussing the PSR equivalency. So it'll be a really great workshop, very informative, and I highly recommend that you register for that workshop, as well as our following workshop, October 1st. I will turn it back over to Anya to close us out.
Thank you, Jaden. And I want to also point out that we will also, the workshop following the October 1st workshop will be held hybrid as well. So it will be the morning of the first day, which is a Thursday of the commission meeting. And we will be in person in Merced for that workshop. And Jaden, can you help me with the date? Sorry, didn't have it in front of me.
Yeah, no problem. So yes, the October hybrid
16th.
workshop, yeah, it'll be October 16th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Thank you. So just a plug, if you're able to be in person October 16th, that would be great. We would love to see you. With that, I will just wrap this workshop up. I want to say that Alika and Jaden and I will stay on for as long as anyone wants. We're happy to stay and answer any questions that you may have, whether it's related to the material presented today or just any questions about the program or guidelines. Happy to stay on and talk to anyone who's interested. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your input and your feedback on the guidelines, and we'll see you October 1st.